You do have the slides available to you. I put a link on D2L so that you can get these slides and look at them as you like, but we can look at them now too. I'm just going to start the lesson if that's okay. Don't see any nays. What are you? An ice cube? All right. Yeah, okay. I think you're talking about the temperature being high and stuff. Yeah. Yeah. All right. Yeah. Do we want to record the slideshow? No, don't think so. We're just going to run it. So ITSM, Information Technology Service Management. So what's that about? I'm not going to go through and read all the things on the slides, but just to basically say, actually watch the video. That lady in the video does an excellent job on this. Yeah, basically, so ITSM is the way that she explains it, and the way it's shown in these notes is a way of sort of making a bridge between the people in the IT department and the customer. And the customer, as we've explained in our earlier class that most of you had with me, or some of you had with me, maybe half of you had with me in the 1260 class, we understood that customers can be internal customers in the organization, can be external customers, and basically anybody who we do some service for, we're going to refer to them as a customer. So that could be the person sitting beside you in your office. It doesn't have to be somebody who's bringing you money for something. So ITSM is a way of bridging. They have a need, we have a service. How do we bridge that to them? How do we do it in the most effective and efficient way? And so ITSM is about that. And so one of the things that we want to do is we want to make that as it says, make that as efficient and effective as possible. And the process that we've noticed over the last couple hundred years if you want to call it progress, is what we've seen in business, and we've seen in basically all kinds of infrastructure, but information technology, especially also true. We've seen this trend from sort of the artistic way of doing things, which is somebody creatively coming up with an idea and then implementing it. We could call that kind of an art. It's a sort of a one-off idea, to a more engineering approach. In engineering, we tend to reuse things, reuse ideas. I gave the example of Toyota to my other class because they're very, very, this is the way they do things. They do a lot of reusing. So for example, they had an engine that they used in their 2700 engine, the four-cylinder engine. It was that they used in the, what do you call that? Hilux? No, is that the one? Yeah, the little pickup. So that engine, they used it across a range of Toyota products. The engine stayed the same for like 20 years. All they did was sort of mild improvements. Now, the thing is about that, so how did that help Toyota? Well, that engine wasn't the most powerful engine that you could get in that size, but it was one of the most reliable engines, and they used it in many of their different products. And the thing is, that engine, people referred to it as unbreakable. If you're interested in that kind of concept, you could, and you're interested in cars, you can do a Google on the program used to be called Top Gear, but Top Gear had a special episode where they tried to break a Toyota Hilux truck, and they ended up dropping it off of a 10-story building and this kind of stuff, and they stuck it in the water, and they did all kinds of things. They could not break this truck, and the genius that is in that is this thing that I talk about, going from the artistic to the engineering. So Toyota realized that what they need is they need to keep it simple, reusable parts. When you get something right, don't sort of try and reinvent it too much, right? We know we're doing it right, so we're going to stick with this. They stuck with this engine for like 20 years, and they got trucks that just, go for 400,000 kilometers for a four-cylinder car. Who does that, right? Toyota. And it's because of that approach to things, which is a very engineering focused approach. And that's what we're trying, and that approach has come into information technology. And it's come into information technology along with the standards that we talk about, standards and frameworks. And ITSM requires that type of an approach, I guess you could say. So it's an engineering approach to it. Now, I'm not going to go through the video because you can go through the video in your own time. It's there for you. Yeah, I put it, it's embedded in the first page that we're looking at here. So we use these words: quality, reliability, and business performance. And the example I just gave you was a Toyota Hilux truck, right? Quality, I hope you get the idea from, I mean, who has a Toyota Hilux truck? You know, it's kind of not fancy enough for most people in Qatar. Having said that, there's probably more Toyota Hilux trucks on the road than there are many others because it's just so useful, right? But the quality is not like Maserati luxury. It's not that meaning of the word. When we say quality, we don't mean luxury. What we mean is it fit for purpose? Does it do what the customer wants it to do? And yeah, the Toyota Hilux does what the customer wants it to do. Quality is not the same as luxury. Absolutely. And so and you notice that in the resale value, right? If you look at a car, the difference in price between the purchase value and the resale value, go and try and buy a 20-year-old Toyota Land Cruiser. I mean, you're still going to fork out 30,000 reals, right? Go and try and buy a 10-year-old Maserati, right? It's going to be way, way less. And that's not because the Maserati is not a good car. It's an awesome car. But the problem is it's very expensive to fix it. You know, you can't get the parts. Toyota, genius, right? Their parts totally interchangeable, right? That engine that they use in the Land Cruiser, same engine they've been using for a long time, right? I mean the 5.7's new, but the other engines, you know, they got that perfect. Those things work perfect, and so they know they're not going to break. Other parts are all interchangeable. I mean, if you've got a Toyota Prado or you got a Toyota um, sorry, I'm sounding like a Toyota salesman. It's just that they actually spend a lot of time thinking about this stuff. The other Toyota I'm thinking about is the FJ Cruiser. They're interchangeable parts. There's lots of parts on the Prado that actually fit on the Imagine, and likewise there are other products. So that means that you go to the sales place, the service place, and you got something broken, and yeah, they got the part. You can fix it. You know what I mean? You don't have to wait 3 months to get a part in because everybody's got this part. So that's the thing and that's the reason why people pay 30,000 reals for a 20-year-old Toyota Land Cruiser. Yeah, because they're going to be able to find the parts. And the other thing is, it was designed and made in the first place to last a really, really long time. Now, what I've been talking about here, how does that relate to ITSM? How does that relate to ITIL? Well, how it relates to ITSM and ITIL, ITIL has 26 processes, 26 processes, which is, and ITIL is specifically about how do we do a service desk. And one of the processes there is ticketing, in which they call they call incident management. But one of the processes they have is called problem management, and they have change management. And what I've just been talking about, quality and your move to engineering, that would fit into the ITIL framework. ITIL, ITIL. We'll get to that in a minute. That would fit into the ITIL framework as um, as problem management. And problem management is about, and change management, which is about how do we design things so they don't break. All right. And so not only is that good for Toyota, that's good for us in IT. So these things here, the idea here is in this slide, we got the business and we got the IT people. I told you ITSM is about bringing them together. So if we're going to do that, we need to understand the business. This slide is about what is the business? So the business is going to have some strategy. It's going to have some governance, compliance, and audit operation. Compliance and audit people might have some lawyers and accounting people. Governance, yeah, also lawyers and accounting people. Corporate strategy, people who have business degrees and plan. But in all of these things, our IT is going to have some input. Well, how are we going to do that? How's our IT going to have input to corporate strategy? And I think I do have a slide on that. And here it is, pops up just as I asked for. All right, so we see here these two overlapping diagrams. And what you notice about each of them, we have IT strategy, corporate strategy. What does that mean? It means the corporate strategy is designed, and then the IT strategy takes its lead from the corporate strategy and develops its strategy to support the corporate strategy. Now, the IT strategy is not the exact same as the corporate strategy, but it does have significant overlap, and that's because it is supporting the corporate strategy. So the big company, if you're in the College of the North Atlantic, so the people there in Building 1, they have a plan that goes 5, 10 years in advance. How are we going to run this organization? And then they say, well, in order to do that, we're going to have some systems. We're going to have some systems for human resources. We're going to have some systems for recruiting students. We're going to have some systems for making sure that their credentials are valid. We're going to have those systems all going to be supported by some information technology systems. So we're going to have the people in information technology are going to have to know what our plan is, and they're going to have a plan to support it. Likewise, corporate governance. Corporate governance, do you notice that the corporate governance circle is inside the corporate strategy circle? So this is kind of like Venn diagrams. I don't know if you're familiar with that, but it's a good way of representing scope of things within each other. So what that means is that everything in corporate governance is part of corporate strategy, but corporate strategy is more than just corporate governance. And likewise, everything in compliance and audit is within corporate governance, but corporate governance is more than compliance and audit. Everything in business operations is going to be affected by compliance and audits, but not everything in compliance and audit has a scope wider than just business operations. Okay, so corporate governance, there's going to be rules, okay, standards, procedures which support the strategy. IT is going to have their own rules, uh, supports for the strategy. And the rules there are going to include things with ITSM. It's going to include our frameworks that we talk about, one of which is ITIL. Um, Compliance and audit. Well, I'm sure you've heard the term auditor. An auditor is usually we think of an auditor as going to be an accountant. If it's financial audit, it will be an accountant. But there's other kinds of audits that you can do. Audits to do with rules in the organization. So an auditor could, well, almost always are going to have some accounting background, but they could also have some computing background, IT background, because you could do an audit of your IT systems, not just for the financial aspects of it. And so IT is also going to support that auditing. And of course, the IT operations are going to support the business operations. So again, as I said, ITSM is making a bridge between IT and the customer. Here, the customer is going to be the wider business to which the organization belongs. I've been talking a lot and I talk fast. And that's my I didn't know that, Alhamza. Alhamza tells me that you can take the 2006 parts and put them in the 2020. That's gonna save you money. Toyota. So
Yep.
I got another Toyota fan here. I'm not the only one. Sorry if I seem like a Toyota fanboy. Yeah, I am. I admit. But I'm in the right place to be a Toyota fanboy, right? Like, I mean, what's like the number one car on the road is Toyota Land Cruiser, right? Which shows that this is a wealthy country because that's an expensive car. And okay, I'll stop talking about Toyota in a while. But why isn't it expensive car? It's an expensive car because the way they made it, right? They made it so that it'll last for 400,000 kilometers with minimal maintenance, that you can maintain it in a little workshop somewhere, yeah, with parts that you can find at the store next door, right? And you can do that for 400,000 kilometers for 20 years. It's amazing. Somebody was a genius down there, and there's a few geniuses there in Tokyo, I imagine. All right, so ITSM evolved due to the reliance of IT on. Sorry, I didn't need to be reading on this. Yeah, so not going to read on that. Just sort of pick some points out of that. Quality models. The idea of quality became very important, as I said before, as an engineering concept. Quality. TQM was a movement back in the 1950s. In the 1950s, Japan was recovering from World War II, and it tried to recover by exporting its way out of being poverty. I worked for a farmer when I was in New Zealand as a like 15-year-old boy. I worked for a farmer, and he had spent 2 years in Japan after World War II as a New Zealand soldier because Japan was occupied by the countries that conquered it in 1945, which is the United States, of course, because they dropped their bomb, but also Australia, New Zealand, and the UK had soldiers in Japan, and basically the soldiers were there in Japan to make sure that Japan didn't come up and have another sort of war in the Pacific. And yeah, well, there wasn't much chance of that because they'd been bombed to heck. But Japan, 100 million people there, and they had a lot of factories. And pretty soon they figured out that they could do something else, right? And we've been talking about Toyota. Toyota came out of that. But Japan needed it. It was in a lot of trouble and needed to sort of export its way out of trouble. And so it was doing that by manufacturing. And in the 1950s, you know, um, I remember, we can't sort of say things that sound too racist. This isn't meant to sound racist, but we used to say, if you bought anything from Japan, that was Jap crap. You know what I mean? Because it wasn't so good. You know what I mean? Maybe it's going to break. But they realized that they had to fix their quality really, really soon, really, really, really quickly. And so it didn't take them too long. They sent people over to the best factories in the world, in the United States and Europe and other places, and had a look at what they were doing, and they're very interested in what some of these factories were doing, and they came up with a process which improved itself over time. Now, one of the people that they got to help them to do that was a guy by the name of J. Edward Deming, and J. Edward Deming basically wrote a book on this, but he introduced this concept of total quality management. And total quality management included a thing called Kaizen. So this is this idea of continuous improvement, Kaizen, total quality management. QA means quality assurance, quality assurance instead of quality control. Quality control is where you just make something in the factory. When it comes out the factory, you check 10 of them out of 100. And if they don't break, then you just let everything go. That's quality control. But quality assurance is way more than that. It's about looking at all the processes and make sure the processes are working as best they can. That's continuous improvement. The Japanese have a word for it. Oh, where is it? Um, it'll come up in a minute. Uh, uh, they call it Kaizen. Anyway, so let me just go to the previous slide. So yeah, Kaizen is not there, right? Anyway, so Kaizen was basically came from this concept of total quality man. Actually, Kaizen's older than total quality management. Total quality management incorporated Kaizen, and Kaizen is this continuous improvement wherein the idea is two brains are better than one. Three brains are better again, right? Uh, and the we need the brain of every person that's working in the company. That's in order to get the best solution that we can have. So in other words, everybody has to think about what they're doing and come up with the best way of doing it. We have to think about it. So people that were working on an assembly line in a factory would see that there's something that's not working too right, and they were given the power to actually stop it and talk to the engineers and let them know that this isn't quite working. Maybe you could do it this way. And that brought a continuous improvement. Continuous improvement. Every person is responsible for the quality, and every person has the ability to do something about it. Um, even quality, yeah. So yeah, there we go. Um, let's keep going. So if you're going to have an IT system, we like to categorize things. What the idea is to divide and conquer, right? If we have an IT system, we want to try and understand it. Maybe it's better if we categorize things. We can break them down into different categories. And so any IT system can be broken down into these kind of categories. You're going to have your hardware, which you guys are now experts in, we hope. Yeah, you've learned a lot about hardware. You're going to have your software, which is going to run on the hardware, your processes, your people, and your data. And so an information system is going to involve all of those things. And yeah, and information technology, that's what we're involved in. And it also includes telecommunications, as it says. All right, stakeholders. All right, so Why are we talking about stakeholders? At the start, I told you that what we're trying to do with ITSM is bring the IT together with the customer. The customer, another name for them we could say is stakeholder. And so this is a bit broader than your idea of a retail customer, right? So your retail customer is just somebody who comes and buys your product or your service. Your stakeholder sort of comprehends or includes all those other customers who don't come in and buy your service. And so, as it says, but they still are affected by your service. All right. So maybe they're the person sitting beside you and your service affects them. They are a stakeholder in what you do, how well you do it affects them. So they are a stakeholder. And so stakeholders in a system, but also you're a stakeholder in your system. You work in it and it affects you, right? You know, it can impact upon your health. It can impact upon your financial situation. There's so many things it can impact upon, but the system actually impacts upon how well you are effective as well in the business. So we got information workers, many people nowadays are information workers who didn't used to be in earlier versions of the economy. Um, Early versions of the economy meant many people were agricultural, and then people became factory workers, and now there's way less factory workers. But we have so many people who are information workers. That is that they have to work with create with information. If they're a knowledge worker, they probably have some kind of special expertise that they bring. Maybe they've got a degree in something. Yeah. And then you have the systems owners who may also be one of those other things as well. Who would be the system owner of the CNAQ system? And who would be the stakeholders? So there's a question for you. What do you think? So let me look at the chat and see if anybody's got a response to that.
Owner,
Sorry?
the manager itself of the college, the dean.
Yes, I think that's a fair thing. Yeah. All right. So the college itself, and maybe that also includes like CNA, but
The
they
president of
somebody has to be. I think the point that you're making is that it's hierarchical. There's somebody at the top, and they would be the ultimate owner. I think that's fair. Yeah, so I would accept that. I'd say that senior management would be the owner. Okay, but so what? Who would be the stakeholders then? If that's the owners, who would be the stakeholders?
the people who are involved in the college, like you are instructor, you are an IT person, you are working in the HR, everyone in the college,
You got
even the
three.
student.
Very good. So what he was saying there, he had three categories of employees of the college. You know, instructor, HR, IT support, and then our ultimate, I guess you could say, customer, who is the student. So all of those are stakeholders, and so the system has to sort of work for all of them. The ultimate customer is the student, but but these other people are included. So system users, there's a lot of systems in the college that there's parts of them at least that you guys don't use. So there's parts of them that you do use. So for example, PeopleSoft, your instructor is recording your grades, recording your attendance on the PeopleSoft system. We're a user. How well that system is designed, how well that system is implemented affects our work quite a bit. So it could, if it was a badly implemented system, it could add a couple of hours work to our day, or at least to our week. And it could add a lot of frustration. And so it could be very bad for us. If it was a particularly bad system, PeopleSoft, it could add a lot of frustration to the students because they're trying to see their grades and stuff and they can't. And I mean, uh, the, so the system has many stakeholders. Each of them has their own special needs, and the system has to take that into account. So the enrollment system, I think we sort of fitted that in. So we only got 10 minutes left. I don't have I mean, if we had a discussion where people wanted to talk more than 40 minutes, what we would have to do is end the meeting and start it again. But I haven't done that too many times. And it's really up to you. If you guys ever want to do that, just let me know and we can keep going. We do have a 2-hour window, but particularly with lectures like this, I don't really want to go more than like the 40 minutes anyways. Um, System under, yeah. Okay. So system users, I think that was Talal. Was that you who mentioned that? And there they are. sponsors, external designers. The designers and the builders are going to be the IT people, really. You have this special title for some IT people, which is like your business analyst and systems analyst. You guys probably did a course in system analysis, and so you've looked at that. You know a little bit about designing things. So your governance. Whenever you use the word govern, we're thinking about setting rules and then seeing that those rules are applied. And so, yeah, so they're going to set the rules and they're going to make sure that they are applied. Yep, that would be good enough on that. And so there's a lot of people involved in the governance. It's kind of a middle management role to senior management role, but yeah, basically your where the rubber hits the road, your basic your worker there, they are acting under direction for governance. So, for example, like myself, I'm an instructor at the college. So, the governance that I have is just making sure that I apply the rules to how I set grades, how I run classes. There's rules for that. How I interact with students, how I enter the grades in the system, all of that. All right. So yeah, so these things apply to the governance when we're talking about IT governance. So I was just talking about from an instructor point of view. Now, if you're looking from the IT department, they have a different than me. My manager would have to do something like this. But me, I don't have decisions to make about money much. They basically give me a classroom and give me an office and give me materials. But the management has to decide. They have a budget. You know, how much are we going to spend on this? How much are we going to spend on that? In the IT department, that's really a big thing. I mean, the resource manager is huge because computer equipment's expensive, and computer networking is expensive. So resource management is going to be a big thing in governance. There'll be some rules about that. How do we decide what things we're going to buy for our computer systems? Who makes those decisions? What kind of documentation do we have around those? How do we measure the performance of the system? Right? Sometimes, sometimes it might not be satisfying those stakeholders. But things like you're going to have response times, you're going to have connection availability. Uh, you know, uh, you know, if you have people that find that they can't get onto the system for more than minutes or seconds in some case, they're going to be frustrated in their job. They can't do their job. That impacts the whole sort of system. So we have to have some way of measuring that and having some way of making sure that we can address it when there are issues. Each of these things I could spend a lot of time talking about. Performance management probably got a whole lecture on that. I mean, it's really very carefully looked at, and there's really good systems in place in any effective business to make sure that your IT performance is measured and is planned properly. Strategic alignment, that just means, does the IT support what the business is trying to do? Your risk management, that just means if there's a problem, a huge outage, what plan do you have in place? So what I'm talking about there is disaster management, right? But that's one part of risk management. There's lots more involved in it. What if everything that we had became obsolete because whole new systems were brought in? Well, there's a risk, which is a money risk. But the bigger risks are going to be things like your disaster management, and just backups and things like that. Value delivery. How happy are people with the things that we put in place? Okay, so compliance, I'm kind of running out of things to sort of go with here. I think we sort of talked enough about this, and we did only have 10 minutes left. So I'm just going to leave this one. This is going to be the last slide. We do need to audit what we're doing, which is basically take our rules and have a look at what we're doing, which we must have measured, and see if they are correct, if things are working out the way that we said they would. And so somebody in the IT department is going to have to go about doing that kind of an audit. I'm going to leave it there. Um, I'm going to pause the recording